An excerpt from Act 2, Scene 1 of Richard II by William Shakespeare. Methinks I am a prophet new inspired, and thus expiring do foretell of him his rash fierce blaze of riot cannot last, for violent fires soon burn out themselves. Small showers last long, but sudden storms are short. He tires betimes that spurs too fast betimes, and with eager feeding doth choke the feeder. Light vanity, insatiate cormorant, consuming means soon preys upon itself. This royal throne of kings, this sceptred isle, this earth of majesty, this seat of Mars, this other Eden, demi-paradise, this fortress built by nature herself against infection and the hand of war, this happy breed of men, this little world, this precious stone set in the silver sea, which serves it in the office of a wall, or as a moat defensive to a house, against the envy of less happier lands. This blessed plot, this earth, this realm, this England, this nurse, this teeming womb of royal kings, feared by their breed and famous by their birth, renowned for their deeds as far from home, for Christian service and true chivalry, as in the sepulchre and stubborn Jewry, of the world's ransom, blessed Mary's Son. This land of such dear souls, this dear, dear land, dear for her reputation through the world, is now leased out. I die pronouncing it, like to a tenant or pelting farm. England, bound in with the triumphant sea, whose rocky shore beats back the envious siege of watery Neptune, is now bound in with shame, with inky blots and rotten parchment bonds. That England that was wont to conquer others hath made a shameful conquest of itself. Ah, would the scandal vanish with my life! How happy then were my ensuing death! Perhaps that was a refresher for some of you guys from high school or college courses, but yes, that's the most famous excerpt from the Shakespeare play Richard II. It's sort of chronologically one of the first of the history plays, and it chronicles, well, naturally, the last years of the reign of King Richard II. The funny thing about Richard II is that it's a play that I feel like has a lot of purchase in modern times, especially in regards to our modern political system. One of the reasons I think that is because if you'll notice, if you really read John of Gaunt's speech, if you really think about the complaints that he has against Richard, it's mostly about how internal corruption, the people who are supposed to be in charge of shepherding this gift that God has given to the English people, the land of England itself, that corruption has sort of turned and despoiled that gift. And that's sort of the idea that I think John of Gaunt is channeling in that speech. And I think it's relevant in the sense that, what are modern politicians doing today, but not the same sort of thing? They're taking the patrimony that has been built up for generations by our forefathers and just sort of selling it off for political expediency, selling it off in the political sense or oftentimes in the monetary sense. And so if you'll notice, John of Gaunt, he's super upset about this. And why? Because, well, he loves England. He is an English patriot in a sense, in a pre-modern sense. And he's rightfully upset. And so I think this is a good introduction for me to talk about how Shakespeare in general, even though it's still taught in the public schools, even though it's still taught in universities, Shakespeare, despite all of the pretensions that certain professors have that Shakespeare is somehow one of them, a social revolutionary. Shakespeare is nothing of the sort. Shakespeare, in fact, today we would call him a reactionary. Of course, at the time, he was just basically a stodgy conservative type. But I want to get into talking about how Shakespeare, because he still has a lot of cultural purpose or cultural purchase as the bard, as the greatest poet of the English stage, can actually be used to smuggle a different and fundamentally non leftist conception of human society into a public school education. So, in essence, to give public school students a different kind of perspective on the world from somebody who they respect implicitly because of the, frankly, kind of silly ancestor worship that we give to William Shakespeare, although he's an excellent poet. And so that's going to be the topic of the upcoming essay for Friday. But until then, this has been the Hidebound Convivium for August 21st, 2019. God bless.